not the money that's the problem in the Philippines. That's another whole story that I won't go into it now. If you have skills that surpass other people, you have power. If you have opinions and people listen to you, you have power. If you have a business position and you have a budget, you have power. If you're financially well off, you have power. If you're creative, you have power. That's almost everybody in this room. I say everybody in this room. If you're innovative, and that's almost everybody in this room, you have power. If you see the intangible beyond the tangible, you have power. In fact, that's the most powerful power, if you see the intangible. If our people are attracted to you, you have power. If you have exceptional talent, you have power. If people follow you, you have power. If you love people and people love you, you have power. If people want to please you, you have power. And if you're the eldest daughter in a Filipino family, you have plenty of power. And there are many of you here because I can recognize you, okay? All right. And if you have a network of resources, which everybody in this room has, you have power. So what I'm trying to say is, because people say, well, how can everybody in St. Scholastica, MIriam and Assumption all be leaders? Of course they can. Because you know why? Because they have power. They just don't know they have it. And if you have the power, you can be a leader in your own field. Okay? So that's the first thing. I want you to have a broader perspective of power. Number two, and now I have to go into something which is a little bit difficult to handle, but I have to do this here. When I was interviewing people, I asked them, what was missing? And this is what they said. What was missing in our education, and that's what I'm trying to do now as president. Number one, they didn't tell us what to do if we were sexually abused. They didn't tell us what to do if we were physically abused. They didn't tell us what to do if I get into a marriage and it's not working. They didn't tell us what to do if the incest is coming from somebody within the family. And this is what I have to tell you. When I spoke earlier, I said, I was sexually abused when I was 6 and 7 years old by a cousin. And I never said anything. And I have to tell you this. Most girls don't say anything. You have the Me Too that is happening in the United States. I wrote this down before the Me Too in the United States. And when one woman came forward, can you imagine those gymnasts who go to the Olympics? The doctor of the gymnasts, of the girls, 98 of them, 98 were abused. Can you imagine? 98 of them. Those are the only ones coming forward. So what do I have to say? It's very important that we educate the girls from the time that they're small. And those of you who are grandmothers or mothers-to-be, talk to your children when they're very young. I had a fabulous mother. I never told her anything. So that happened when I was 6 and 7 years old. It didn't end there. We went to the States, and my father's teacher from LaSalle, of LaSalle brother, did the same thing in the States to me. And that's at the end of it. When I was physically abused at the age of 6, I never wet the bed. I wet the bed. And my mother put my aunt, quote unquote, she wasn't really an aunt, but she was in charge of us. And you know what she did? She put me on top of the bed and she said, take all your clothes off. And the two maids were standing there like this. So I did. Then she got an orinola and she put it on the bed. And then she took a match and she lit it. And she burnt me. I think that's the worst part of it. Physical abuse is probably worse. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if you don't, because I had a wonderful mother, but I would never tell her. You just don't. You just don't. Look at all these movie stars. They didn't say anything until finally one person spoke. The statistics are terrible. It's in here. The United Nations did a study worldwide. 1 out of every 3 girls throughout the world is physically or sexually abused before the age of 18. Let's be generous. 1 out of every 5 before the age of 25 in some countries. We have to stop it. And the only way to stop it is if people like myself and companies step forward and we say, enough. And there's another story in here which is even sadder, another Assumption girl. And this is the worst part of it. Her father was abusing her, and her mother would turn and face the wall in the same room. We have to stop this. And the only way to stop it is when the child is small, and this happens to little boys as well. But of course, the statistics for boys is 1 out of 7. The statistics of girls is 1 out of 3. Finally, when I hit my 60s and I was going to write this book, I called my family together. We are 8 sisters and 1 boy. The boy is the bunso. And so I said, okay, I might as well tell them because I'm going to read it in the book, and they don't know anything. So I said, well, we're 8 girls, so maybe the statistics are wrong. I'm 1 out of 8. When I told my story, one of my sisters broke down. I looked at her and I said, why? And she just cried, and she just cried and cried. And I didn't ask her any more questions. No use asking. I just asked, who was it? A carpenter who came to the house. So what I'm trying to tell you is, we have to teach the girls to protect themselves. And I'm asking the men in the room, can you please educate your boys? Have them respect a woman's body. Have them respect a woman's mind and soul. It can only come from the parents. So this is something that was left out. And when I talk to the girls, sometimes I talk to the seniors, and there are 35 in the class. I said, it's 1 out of every 5. Let's be generous. How many of you in this room? I know you're here. Talk to somebody. Talk to them now. So, that's a message I'm giving you. Because if we don't stand up and say something, this is going to, and you know, I have to tell you, it's not somebody in the street where you're raped. It's your uncle, your brother, my cousin. One Assumption girl, she used to confide in me. And by the way, when I was principal, you don't know how many girls came to my office. They didn't know my story. And people ask me, how come the girls can confide in you? We don't get it. Well, the girls didn't know it, but they felt a vibe that I understood pain. Now, what's the good side? There's a good side to this, by the way. And here's the good side. When you've been abused and you have accepted it, this is what happens. You become very empathetic, extremely empathetic. And also you can spot it a mile away. I remember when I was principal, I stopped 2 suicides, both of them abused. I stopped 2 suicides because I could see it a mile away. Actually, no, there were 3 of them. 3 of them. And if you don't have experience, you won't know. But it does make you very, very empathetic. So that's the good side of it. I learned something because there was one time when I said it, because I did tell my superiors when I was in the convent, but they didn't know what to do. I'm not blaming them, they just didn't know what to do. You know why? Because we're not educated. We have to be educated. It's not easy. I remember I was in class at USF in San Francisco, and there was a priest in the room, and one woman said, we were talking about abuse, and one woman said, well, I'm a victim of incest in my own family, it was my dad, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure I'm the only one in this room. And we were like 12 people in the room. And there you see the numbers. We were 6 women. So I raised my hand. It's correct, 1 out of every 3, she and me. You know, I learned the meaning of command responsibility. I've never forgotten this as long as I live. A priest went up to me, come here, Chita, I'll show you what he did. Can you hold the mic? I'll show you what he did. That's it. No, that's okay. Thank you. He held my two hands like this and he said, in the name, he was a priest, in the name of the Catholic Church, I'm sorry. And he said it 3 times, in the name of the Catholic Church, I'm sorry. Because it was an assault, brother. I understood command responsibility. He was a young priest. And I'm sure he never did it. You can tell by the look on his face, he's so innocent. But he knew what command responsibility was. So I'm telling you, and the boys out there, I'm telling you the same thing. Please teach your boys. Okay? Now, I want to end with this. First of all, people like the mother of Brooke Castillo's here. Can you stand up, please? Brooke Castillo's mom. She's one of our first pilots. There are 3 famous first pilots from St. Scholastica. And they have beautiful, you have to read this book, not because of me, they have beautiful stories. What's her name? The one who, in the plane cast, Balayo? Balayo? What's her name? It's Balayo, no? Anyway, there was this one pilot from St. Scholastica. And in those days, women just could not be pilots, okay? And so she was flying this plane with a male. And they were flying over where Clark Air Base is. And there was a heavy residential area. And there's a signal among pilots that if the motors go down and the plane is going to crash, you look at each other and you press the button and then you're ejected from the plane. So they lost both of their engines and it was going straight into a residential area. So she and the pilot and the male, they looked at each other and he pressed the button and he was ejected. She didn't press her button. You know what she did? She stayed in the plane and veered the plane into the fields. So it didn't kill anybody, just herself. Educating women leaders. St. Scholastica, you did a fabulous job. We have a story that's not in here. One of our students was in a boat going to work. She going to Cebu or Iloilo, Bacolod, and the boat sank, and she was safe. But she dove back in because her grandmother was in the boat, and they never found her. But she went back to get her grandmother. That's a leader. That's a leader. So I want to end with this. First, I want to thank all of you also who are in this book. And many of you, your stories are here. And I want to end with one more thing I want you to do. 1, an expanded sense of leadership. 2, let's keep our girls' colleges. You know why? Because we have to customize our education totally for women. I asked, when I taught in Ateneo, I told the boys, do you know what it is to have your period every month from the age of 11 or 12 or 13? Do you have any idea? And the pain we go through, and you make fun of us? No. Would you like to have it? No. Would you like to have 9 months pregnancy where you can hardly walk the last week? Would you like that? No. How about labor pains? Would you like some labor pains? No. I said, appreciate women because we have to do this. And even those among us who have not had children, we are used to suffering because we have it every single month and it's not fun. So we are used to suffering. That's what I'm telling you. We have taken for granted the fact that we're number 2 in the world. I am proof of that. I went to Assumption in 3rd grade. I went to the United States. I was with all girls, right? I was the naughtiest girl in the class. Mother Teresita had to take me from class to class because I was so naughty. I would not sit still. 3rd grade, I go to school in the United States. Guess what? Silence. Me, silent. Totally silent for 5 years. Because it was co-ed. Because you just assume the boys just take over and the girls are just used to backing up. It's common. It's very common. I saw it in Ateneo. The boys come forward, and I love the boys in my class. They would follow me everywhere on Ateneo. But the girls just back up and let them take the show. I don't know why, but it happens. That's why we have to customize it, and we have to go with the growth and development of a woman because a woman is different. I have this question. The American government has been shut down, you know that, right? If you were listening to the news. If all those senators were women, what do you think? What would happen to those dreamers if they were all women? Do you think a woman would do that, separate a child from the other? A woman would never do that. Of course, maybe I'm biased. All right, I'd like to end with this. My last message. Live in the present moment and keep trying. Four Quartets is one of my favorite T.S. Eliot poems. And he says this: isolated with no before and no after, but a lifetime burning in every moment. That's the beautiful part. So those of you who are young, old, middle-aged, whatever you are, there's a lifetime burning in every moment, meaning live in the now and in the present moment. And this is one of my favorite lines of Eliot. Keep trying. And most of us, this is the aim, never here to be realized. Who are we? Who are we? Only undefeated because we have gone on trying. The reason why we're undefeated is because we keep on trying. So whether you come from a dysfunctional family, or whether you are in your older years, and many of our classmates have gone on to how would I say, a second career, like Conchitina. She's painting now. Isn't that fabulous? Once she was a model, and I was so jealous of her because I would see her going down the catwalk, and I said, oh God, I'm so clumsy, and she's so grateful. And now she's painting. Oh, great. So the only thing I can do is take pictures, but she can actually paint it. So no matter where you are undefeated, and you go on trying. And when we're trying to educate girls and our boys to respect themselves and respect their bodies, please don't stop trying. Thank you. So, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pinky. At this point, I think we would like to start with the question and answer portion.
And you don't have to ask questions. I know you always want to go home and have dinner, so it's okay. But if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask any questions?
Not a question, but you always say that, you've been saying that, tell the boys, the men, to educate your boys. I think we, as mothers, should also educate our boys.
Absolutely.
It's very important for us to let boys know, our sons, grandsons, nephews, whatever. Let them know how these things work.
And let me tell you, I asked the mothers why men mature so much slower in the Philippines. 29, 30. I said, when do men mature in the Philippines? You know what they answered? Never. Don't exaggerate. And then I said, but then I asked the most important question, whose fault it is? You know what they said? It's our fault. Because the Filipina female babies the boys. You know how I know it? We're 8 girls, 1 boy, my brother Joey, so babied by my mother. The youngest. He's the youngest. Any questions?
Any more questions?
Yes.
Yes.
There's somebody back there.
Hi, I'm a grade 12 student in Assumption right now, and my class, we have been talking about how sex ed wasn't really explained to us. So why is that sex ed wasn't expanded in our education?
Because, as I told you, for some reason, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, we have this thing about sex, that it's something to hide and be ashamed of, as if we invented it. It's not. God invented it, and we should be far more comfortable with it. But that's the next generation. Hopefully, you're in this room. Yes, you're right. That's the reason. But I have to give this little speech first before I exchange it in Assumption. so that the sisters and the teachers will know why I'm changing it. Because I talk from experience.
Odette, you wanted to ask a question?
Because Pinky, you mentioned that when you told your superiors or the sisters of the Assumption about what happened to you, they could not act on it because they didn't know how. So it's one of my concerns. When somebody comes to you to say, I was abused, how do you handle that?
Number one, it's not your fault. That's the first thing you have to say. It's not your fault. That's number one. Number two, you take her hands the way the priest took my hand and say, in the name of humanity and everybody in this family, I'm so sorry. Apologize first. Next, you have to build their self-confidence. It took me many years to build my self-confidence. Thanks to my classmates, it was easy. No, my classmates had a lot to do with building my self-confidence.
Jeannie, you wanted to ask a question?
But those are the three things. Build the self-confidence. And this is the fun part. After you build the self-confidence, then you have to give it up. That's the fun part. First, you build yourself up, and then you let it go. Any other questions? Okay. Gina, did you want to say something? You look like you're giggling. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. I greatly appreciate it. And by the way, if you have any questions for me in private, I would be happy to answer you in private as well. And those of you, I know you want to go home and have your dinner and whatever. And if you want me to sign your book for whatever reason, that's why you were giving a bookmarker. You can write your name. You can wait for me here, or you can write your name, put it in the book, and give it to, where's Everly? Everly's back there. Give it to Everly, and you can pick it up in Assumption next week. I'll sign it in school so you can leave if you want to. Thank you again.
Okay, now we will have the book signing. Everybody's waiting for that. So those who haven't had their book signed, you can just line up in the middle of the aisle. And those who haven't purchased the book, you can purchase it at that side, at the highlight table. It's only $695 and will be available in selected National Bookstore and Power Books branches. On behalf of National Bookstore and Anvil Publishing, thank you once again to all of you for coming here today. Thank you. I think there's a control number, 1 to 20, etc. Is it in the...
Yes, if you have the bookmarker, maybe we could start with control numbers 1 to 20, so it will not be, so we can be a little more organized. Yeah, she's there.